Hi. So today I'm in the garden. I've pulled up a lot of the old plants, and I'm going to start raking some of the pine needles and branches and other stuff that has grown into the beds so that I can start tilling the dirt to get it ready for planting. I'm finding a lot of weeds that have grown in the beds, such as these. So once all the pine needles are cleared, I'll take out the weeds and try to get it just down to soil so that I can start tilling the garden. The garden rake I have today has very wide tines, so what it does is it pulls up all of the things that I want but lets the soil come through so that I'm not losing any of the garden soil that's in the bed. Right here I have a large pile of pine needles that was pulled from the bed right over behind me. That's where the tomatoes and basil were growing last year. So as I said, with that rake, a lot of the soil falls through the rake so that I'm just taking the pine needles and throwing these away. I just want you to have a chance to see the difference. This is the garden bed that I have raked out. Yesterday, this is the one that had all of the tomato poles still in and the basil plants that were still in the ground. Those have now been thrown out. The poles have been put aside for this year's plants. And just to compare it, this is what it looks like after the pine needles are removed, and this is the squash bed, which I have not pulled out all of the needles, so you can see the difference in clearing. Once these needles are cleared, whatever is remaining, like in that one, all of those remaining leaves and needles will get tilled into the soil, and that will help. In this bed, I have a very stubborn and deep-rooted fennel plant from last year, which is right here. So when I try to pull it, the plant is actually breaking and the roots are staying in the ground. There's also another one right here that did break at the right before the roots. So I'm just going to use this rake again, and I'm going to get it as deep as I can just to try to start loosening the plant. And then once I loosen the roots, I can pull it up and you can see how thick and how strong those roots were holding the fennel plant to the ground. As I mentioned earlier, these plants are very, very tall last year, so as they get taller, the roots get deeper and stronger. This is how the food is fed into the plant, so it takes the water and the nutrients from the ground and from the roots. The water and nutrients go up the stalk or up the stem into the leaves when they're green to help make more food for the plant, and then eventually into the fruit that happens at the flower. Hi. Right over here I have, we were talking about weeds and how they can choke out the plants. I have a few different varieties that are growing just in this bed alone. Right over here we have regular grass. On my lawn this would be great. In my garden not so much because it does choke out the plants. It actually will compete for the water and the nutrients, and the grass will grow stronger and my garden vegetables will not if it's in my bed. So I'm going to keep this aside for my lawn, but not my garden. Right here, this weed is actually mint. There's a lot of different varieties of mint. There's a peppermint, a sweet mint. I've even grown like a lemon scented mint, but because it is a weed, it grows, the root systems grow under the ground, and it can actually choke out a whole area. So when you're growing this, it's better not to grow it around other vegetables, but to find almost a ground cover area where you can let it spread. I do use mint a lot in the summer. I'll put it inside some ice water. It gives it a wonderful, wonderful flavor. Some people will dry it and use it in teas. The same stuff that's used, the oils from the leaves are used to make ice cream and different kinds of oils. It does smell wonderful. So that will have to go into a ground cover area. And I don't know the name of this kind of weed. A lot of roots in this one, so I'm just going to shake the soil from it. But you can see here that a flower has started to grow from the top of it. And if you remember when we were talking about flowers and plants earlier in the fall, we spoke about how the flower is where the seed is produced, and when the seed is mature and ready, it actually will help to start to grow more plants. So I do want to get this out of my garden before I have more weeds growing of this variety. Here's another piece of it here. This is a very common weed in my garden. I'm not sure why or where it came from, but I find a lot of it every year.